Okay. I think it's working. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming on this early Monday morning to learn about individual development plans. My name is Alyssa Ewer, and I work in the graduate school in the Office of Professional Development and Communications. I'm the assistant dean in that office. And I have Amy Fruchtman here with me today. Amy will be running the slides and chiming in at some point too, since Amy hosts this workshop for grad students and postdocs too. So I wanted to first of all say that you will be hearing a lot about individual development plans over the next few months, and I'll tell you a little bit more as we go through the presentation as to why that is. So I commend you for coming out to learn about them early on. And I also wanted to point out that this event today, like I said, is being lecture captured, and it's part of a series on career development for graduate program coordinators. So can I see how many people are graduate coordinators here okay, so most people here are grad program coordinators. So this series was intended to help grad coordinators kind of build some skills around career development theory and some comfort level having conversations with graduate students about career-related issues. So these are all in this KB document, and I'll actually refer to one of the past events too, so take note of where this is. And there's videos in here. All of the materials from today's presentation and other presentations will be in here as well. And I also wanted to point out, if you scroll to the top, Amy, we have just, scroll down a little bit more. We have just one more event in this series. So on August 18th, we have an informal brown bag discussion about what things are in store for fall semester. So telling you about what the graduate school is doing. We also want to hear from programs too. So hopefully we'll see you there as well. I think we're okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I also wanted to let you know that there's kind of two different goals to what we're doing today. So we wanted to give you information about individual development plans and about how you can build career development goals in an IDP. But we also wanted to deliver this in a way that you would get some training, I guess, on how to provide the similar presentation for graduate students or postdocs in your program. So what we're doing today is we'll actually give you the presentation that we give to grad students and postdocs. You'll have full access to this slideshow with all of the presenter notes, and you'll have access to all of the handouts as well afterwards. So if you are interested and you want to host this in your program, you're more than welcome to do that. If you have any questions about doing so or aren't feeling quite as confident doing so, feel free to talk to Amy or I afterwards, and we'll give you some help with that. Okay? So I think we're ready to start then. Okay. So creating an individual development plan. I wanted to start this off by reading a quote from a book, Thriving Through the Experience, which is written by several folks, Freestedt, Crone, James, Morgan, and the Crone in that list is Wendy Crone, who's our current Associate Dean for Graduate Education. So this kind of captures some important things about IDPs. So the idea of mapping out one's future at an early point in one's career scares many people. But if you realize that your plan will change and develop as you advance in your career, then you can think of it in more of a creative and less permanent way. Strategic planning is a cyclical process that you continuously build on throughout your career. You should revisit your plan on a regular basis and modify it to fit your needs. So our goals for today, and remember that this is directed at grad students and postdocs, so talking to you as grad students and postdocs. So our goals for today are to learn to engage in self-assessment, and to learn to define achievable goals, and also to develop strategies for sharing, implementing, and sustaining your plan. And we'll walk you through the steps of each of those. Overall, our goal is to give you some things to think about today. In 90 minutes, we won't be able to give you enough time to write out a full IDP, but we'll give you definitely the basis to get you started. We'll give you some tools. We'll give you some resources that you can explore further afterwards. And you'll get to practice jumping in and trying it out, which will make it easier when you sit down at home and you finish working on your IDP. Okay. So what is an IDP? Let's start there. An IDP is a written plan, and the written part is key because you feel more committed to it once it's written down. It's a written plan that helps you focus on and advance your academic and professional development. So there's two parts to it, academic and professional or career development. IDPs are commonly used in industry and government, usually in an HR setting, sometimes in conjunction with a performance evaluation, but not always. And they help employees pursue career goals. And IDPs are becoming more and more popular in higher education settings as well. So if we break down the IDP, the individual development plan, the individual piece means that it's unique and it's tailored training and career goals for each person. Okay, it's also private to that person, and that's something that we talk about again and again. And when we get to the part where we talk about discussing the IDP with your mentor, we'll talk about how to select parts that you feel comfortable talking with people about, but ultimately the whole plan is private to yourself, so you don't feel like you have to hand it over to anybody. Development means improvement or maturation needed to achieve individual goals. And the plan has to do with setting some specific steps towards goals. Okay? And here's some inspirational quotes for you. Can I see a show of hands? How many people have an IDP or have had an IDP in the past? Has anybody done this? A couple of hesitant hands. So what was the process like? Could you tell us just very briefly why you did an IDP and what it was like?
I did an IDP for myself because I wanted to see what the students would be going through, and I found it kind of hard, really, because it was hard to realize what my strengths were, and I knew what I wanted to do, but it was hard to break it down into small increments and find the timeline. I found it difficult, really. So,
anybody else? Anybody else have an IDP? Okay, that's okay. It's fairly new, so we didn't expect a lot of people would, but it'll be gaining momentum. So if you do this workshops for grad students and postdocs, having them talk about their experience, some of their challenges is really important as well. Okay, thank you, Sharon. Okay. So why should I have an IDP? For all of the rest of us who don't have IDPs, why should I have one? An IDP is an opportunity to focus on what you need. So in the midst of our busy, busy lives as graduate students or postdocs or maybe grad coordinators, rarely do we actually take the time to focus on ourselves and our own development. And so this gives you an opportunity to do that. Through an IDP, you identify skills, interests, and values. So the skills piece has to do with things that you're really good at, things that you're not so good at, and that you could build on some more. And the interests and values get at what's really important to you in your chosen career. So when you're at the point in your life as a grad student or postdoc, you're making decisions about what the next step is. Thinking about what's really important to you, what your interests and values are, is important as you're making that next step. An IDP will help you develop learning and performance goals. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but the idea is that sometimes you have to set some learning goals so that you can build some knowledge and skills before you set a performance goal. So we want to be careful not to jump to that performance goal, but to think about some learning goals that are important first. Okay? An IDP gives you an opportunity to communicate with your mentor or mentors, and we'll talk about having multiple mentors. So it gives you some structure to approach a conversation with your mentor on something that may be kind of intimidating if you had no structure, you had no preparation going into that conversation. This gives you that preparation. An IDP is important because goal setting actually leads to, and there's research to support this, leads to enhanced success and job satisfaction. Okay? And developing an IDP is a skill that you're going to use again and again. It's a skill like any other. It'll take some time and practice initially, but then it'll help you actually gain control of your professional direction. And we continue to learn and develop throughout our careers, so it's something that once you've done it as a grad student or postdoc, you can come back to it later in your life as well. And then the final piece is compliance. So if you want to go to the next slide, Amy. Has anybody heard about this? Is anybody familiar with the NIH recommendation? Okay, so last July, the NIH recommended that institutions require IDPs for their grad students and postdocs who are on NIH funding. How many of you work with people affected by this? Quite a few. Yeah, so yeah, we expect that it'll probably be a requirement because that's usually the way things go. They start as recommendations. So we're trying to be preemptive here and be prepared. So there's that, and if you go to the next slide, Amy, this talks about the UW-Madison policy that the Research Policy Advisory Committee drafted in June, and it has to do with requiring IDPs for grad students and postdocs on NIH funding because of NIH's recommendation, but then also recommending them for all graduate students and postdocs because we know that they're good for all grad students and postdocs. Okay, so this is one of the reasons that you'll be hearing more about IDPs in the coming months. We're just on the verge now of coming out with more communications about the new resources and tools that we've developed. So how many have been involved in that work group across campus? I know there's a few people in here. We've had probably, I think we have about 40 people who've kind of cycled in and out of a work group from across campus that has been thinking about ways that we'll address this requirement and recommendation. And developing tools, we'll have a new website coming out. One of the reasons we're video recording this is so that people can get this type of training. So there'll be lots more information coming out soon. Okay. Okay, so let's actually talk about IDPs now. So these are the steps as we understand them. So IDPs are flexible. They can mean lots of things to lots of different people. And this is the way that the work group has kind of conceptualized IDPs and are talking with grad students and postdocs about IDPs. So these 5 steps assess. So assess your skills, values, and interests. Step 2 is to develop the goals and actually write the plan. Step 3 is to discuss the plan with your mentor or mentors. Step 4 is to execute the plan, probably the most challenging step to actually do it. And step 5 is to revise and review. So we're recommending at a minimum that grad students and postdocs revisit their IDPs at least once per year, but more often than that would be more helpful. And it's a living document. You don't do it and set it aside. You keep coming back to it. You keep accomplishing goals, revising goals, setting new goals as you go. Okay. And we have kind of 3 factors to consider throughout the IDP process. Those being skills, current responsibilities, and career interests. So the first one has to do with skills. So the first step in an IDP is a self-assessment step, which helps you discover and document what you're good at already, what needs improvement, what you like to do, what's important to you in a career or a career environment. And so you think about your strengths and what you might need to improve. And again, remember that the IDP is private to you, so you can be honest, and you're encouraged to be honest and thinking about what your skills and some of your deficiencies are. It's most effective if you're actually thinking about the things that you need to improve in your plan. So be honest, know that you don't have to share this with other people if you don't want to. And be realistic as you look at your current abilities as well. So what you discover or confirm through this self-assessment step is going to inform your decisions for goal creation, which will be the next step. Okay. So we have many self-assessment tools available to us. You can find out about those through a career services office, through the graduate school website, and then we have one that's built into the IDP template. So if you take out this handout, and if you came in late and you don't have handouts, they're up at the top of the room. And I realized that page numbers got cut off when I made copies this morning. So this is a work in progress. We'll move those page numbers up. So if you go to page, it would be page 4. The self-assessment in this template, as an example, is broken into 9 different categories. These are based on the National Postdoc Association core competencies. And then I think there are 7 core competencies originally, and then we pulled out, or I think it's 7, 6. And then we pulled out a couple that we wanted to emphasize some more, so those are the additional ones. So we have 9 total. And this template is very generic, and it's intended to be generic for all disciplines. So we have 150 different programs at UW-Madison, so for graduate students. So if this seems generic, that's because it is. There is an opportunity to define some additional other areas within each of these categories. And programs may come out with their own assessments too, or their own IDP template. I know Deb has worked on something in her program, so that's completely okay too. If this seems too generic and you want to develop something more specific for your program, that's great. But we wanted to at least provide this so that everybody has something to start with. So where you see the radio buttons, those get at skills. And when you get to page 8, which is probably cut off, this is where, so there's 2 big boxes on this page, open-ended boxes. So this is where you start to think about interests and values. So this page is just as important as well. Okay. And I should add too that we're looking for feedback on this template, so if you have any recommendations going forward, the next year we're going to spend kind of polishing up all of our materials around IDPs too. So if you have any experience with this that you want to share with us, please do. Okay. So if we go to the next slide, this is another, and I think if you click again, Amy, this is another example of an assessment tool that you could use. This is myidp.sciencecareers.org. If you just Google MyIDP, you'll find this. This is a free service. Anybody can create an account. And it's tailored for graduate students or postdocs in STEM. So it is a little bit more limited, a little bit more specific, I guess. So if your students fall into that category, you might want to send them this way. The nice thing about this tool, it has the assessment built in, but once you get to the point where you're setting career goals, it'll remind you about those goals. When you say that you're going to do something by a specific date, it'll send out reminders. It goes into a lot of depth about career options, provides further reading too. So you may want to check this out if your students are in STEM. Okay. So those are 2 examples of IDP templates and assessments. But like I said, there could be a lot of other options as well. Okay, so our next activity for you, remember your grad students and postdocs, so we're actually going to walk you through the workshop just like we would for them. So here is where we give folks a few minutes to actually think about the self-assessment. So we'll have you practice going through the self-assessment by filling out the form that we just looked at. So do that for about 2 minutes. And then after you've gotten through that, through page 8, then what we'd like you to do is go to page 10. And again, I'm sorry that the page numbers are cut off, but page 10 is the one that looks like this. It has the chart on it. So on page 10 at the top, you'll fill in 3 skills. So skills that you're good at, a skill that you need to work on, and a skill that's important in your future career. Okay? And then we'll come back to step 3. So we'll give you 4 minutes to do steps 1 and 2. right, we have about 2 more minutes. So if you haven't gotten to the page where you are filling in those 3 skills, you might want to do that now.
Okay, I just wanted to add one thing from presenting this workshop. Can you hear me? It's hard to tell. From presenting this workshop also to grad students and postdocs that sometimes it's helpful to tell them that this exercise is just brief. We know that when they really do it, it's going to take longer, but it also encourages them to not be so perfectionistic. You know, just do it. It doesn't matter if it's a 4 or a 5 right now, just do it. And just list a couple, those 3 skills as we're asking you to do. And sort of getting the speed, I think, helps them work through it more quickly.
Good, thank you, Amy. Okay, so the next thing we'll do is take about 5 minutes or so to pair up. So find somebody sitting close to you and take turns sharing those 3 skills and describing how you can improve or develop those skills. And again, the idea here is talking this through with somebody will help you with the thought process. It also helps you feel more committed to goals once we get to that point. So pair up and talk through. Yeah. Okay, let's give it one more minute. One more minute.
Okay, time is up. Time is up. Good discussion. We're going to stop you from discussing, even though this is wonderful. As you might guess, this part where we do the think, pair, share is something that the students and postdocs really love. In evaluations after these sessions, they say they love more time to do that. And I think part of it, from how they've talked about it, is that it helps them think about, of course, the goal, but it also sort of normalizes the whole experience and helps them hear from other people goals, either that they hadn't thought of or that they recognize and are familiar to them and they want to include. And so it's been a really helpful part of the exercise. So if you're considering doing this with graduate students, I would really recommend including this part.
Okay. All right, thanks, Amy. So another thing that you can do as you're helping grad students and postdocs think about their skills is to ask them to verify those skills with others. So you could ask them to think about how others view them and what they would describe as their strengths and areas for development. They could think about or ask family members, friends, possibly their mentor or advisor to get at some of those skills and areas for development as well. Okay? So back to our factors to consider. The next two are current responsibilities and career interests, which lead us right into step 2, which is actually developing the goals and writing the plan. Okay? So as we go through these factors in setting goals, here's again where we want to think about the difference between performance goals and learning goals. So if you're working with students or postdocs and they set something that's a performance goal that you don't think that they quite have the skills or knowledge yet to achieve, they're not going to be very successful. They could get frustrated. So make sure that you're encouraging them to step back and to set learning goals as well as performance goals. Okay? So, current responsibilities. Here is where grad students and postdocs can think about milestones that they need to achieve in their program or in their position, and expectations of them academically or from their supervisor. So for example, degree requirements may be something that you direct your students to at this point. Read the program handbook, materials from the graduate school, talk with department chairs, DGSs, PIs, supervisors to find out what they need to be working towards. They can talk with peers or more experienced graduate students and work from the mistakes of others as well. And they can also at this point be reading some general literature about graduate education. So for example, the Chronicle of Higher Education, you could ask them to take a look at that and see if they could use that as a source of information for things that they should be working on and making progress towards. Okay. So you can also ask them to think about program or project goals at this point as well. What are some things that they need to be doing right now, either as a grad student or postdoc, before they complete their time here? And what are some of the scholarly activities or more general development activities that they would like to accomplish? So that may go above and beyond their degree requirements. So example of things that they may need to do are things like coursework, prelims, thesis, writing papers or articles, designing an experiment, but they might also like to learn to write better, design better assessments for a course, publish an article, become first author on an article, present at a conference, experience mentoring, things like that. Okay, so help them think through those things at this point. This slide, I think, is more examples of those things. So let's go to the next one. So this talks about SMART goals. So part of writing the plan is to think about an implementation plan too. So not just to set those goals, but to actually think about how they're going to achieve those and set some very specific steps for themselves at this point. So a model that we like to use is the SMART model for writing goals. You have a handout that goes into detail about this. So basically it's asking you if your goals are focused. Are they specific or focused? Are they measurable? Could somebody identify whether or not you've achieved the goal? Are they attainable and realistic? Are they relevant? Are they something that's really important to the student or postdoc? And are they time bound? Have they attached a date by which they're going to achieve that goal? So all of those things are very important, and they'll help as the grad student or postdoc is implementing the plan to be able to follow those steps that they've laid out. Okay. So the next slide gives some examples of what a SMART goal might look like. So if your goal is to submit a paper for publication, and this is a very generic example, but you might complete your data analysis by November 1. This would be written into your plan. Choose your journal by November 15th, write the intro by December 15th, share with your advisor, and then complete the discussion by January 30th. So you've broken it down into steps, and you've attached a timeline with each of those steps. Okay? And I think that this is more examples of the same. So, and this is a point where grad students and postdocs will ask us for examples too, and you can decide whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. So sometimes giving them examples of what goals might look like helps them think through, but they could also, if they have examples, be limited in their thinking too, and you're steering them in a particular direction. So use your judgment in terms of how many examples you want to give them. And then the third factor to consider is career interests. And this is where we'll get into some of the career focus for today. So if you go to the next slide, Amy. So here is where they ask themselves questions like, what type of work would you like to do? What is important to you in your future career? What are some of your long-term career goals? And what will you do to achieve these goals? So this type of thought gets at some of the things that Angela Byers-Winston talked about. How many people were at Angela's presentation in June? It was really good, and it's in that KB document if you want to watch the video. This handout has 2 slides from her presentation. So she talks about career development in terms of kind of 3 phases or 3 questions. So who am I, where am I going, and how do I get there? Okay, so you can use an IDP to get at some of those things. So for example, if a grad student is wondering what careers exist, so maybe they're interested in careers beyond the academy, they're changing their career path, so they want to know what types of careers exist and what does it take to work in those careers. They can set some goals that may have to do with, for example, doing informational interviewing, internships, reading about careers, attending a conference on a particular type of career that they'd like to learn more about. So those are some examples of how you could build career development goals into the IDP. It's also important at this point to think about who they're going to talk with their IDP about. So if they're interested in careers beyond the academy and their advisor perhaps is not interested in them taking that path, here's where you might want to encourage them to have multiple mentors. It's a good idea regardless, to have a few different people who they're talking with, different goals, through in their IDP, because it brings in more perspective, more advice, more variety of opinion. So here's where it might be kind of intimidating for them to think about taking these goals to their primary advisor, but let them know that they can have multiple people that they're talking with their IDP about. Okay. And there are some resources on our website as well, having to do with career exploration. So our URL here for the grad school website is there, so be sure to check that out. And then also the Versatile PhD, which you can also get to through our website, and you should, so that you log in with your NetID. That's a great resource if students are interested in careers outside of the academy. It's a great place for them to see what other options there are. And the Versatile PhD actually has, they'll have like the resume, the application materials from people who have PhDs and have headed outside of the academy and have successful careers. So that those people share all of those materials in Versatile PhD. So it's really good. So those are a couple of places to head. And the next slide, some examples of career exploration goals in the IDP. Expand professional networks, update your CV or translate your CV into a resume, identify new mentors, read about career options, attend career-related events, and do informational interviews. And those are just a few. You can probably think of more as well. And remember that you'd be writing those as SMART goals. So something like informational interviews, you might set, I'm going to conduct 5 informational interviews and outline who they're with and the dates and that type of thing. So make sure that as you're thinking about these goals, they're always SMART goals. Okay. So the next step is to actually write the plan. So here is where you're on page 10, and you're asking yourself, what are my overall goals and objectives? What are the skills and knowledge that I need to learn? How am I going to acquire skills and knowledge? What resources do I need? What's the timeline and what's realistic? How am I accountable? And how do I know when I've successfully achieved my goal? And the template that we've provided is one place to do that. I should add too that this is a fillable PDF, so you have a printed version of it in front of you today, but it'll be a fillable PDF too, so students can fill their goals in here and save it and modify. Okay. So the next you're going to get to talk with your neighbor again. So if you take brainstorm 5 goals related to your current responsibility or career interests, and remember to think like a grad student or postdoc again. What might those things be? And do that for 3 minutes, and then choose 2 of those to write as SMART goals, and you'll do that as a pair. Okay? All right, so 3 minutes on your own to brainstorm those goals. I'll tell you when 3 minutes is up. Okay? You do this one as a pair, right? Okay. That might be a thing that we want to change on the slide. I thought that was the case, but oops. Okay, 1 more minute on your own to brainstorm those 5 to 6 goals related to your current responsibility or career interest. 1 more minute. Okay, so now if you're ready, we'll take about 5 minutes to come together as pairs and actually write those goals out as SMART goals together with your partner. And just choose 2 of those goals. You should be able to do that in about 5 minutes. We have about 2 minutes left. 2 minutes.
Okay, we're going to wrap up the discussion. And we are going to take the opportunity to ask you to share, if you'd like to, what you discussed or some ideas, so you can get a feel for how this is when we do it with students. Does any pairing or group want to share what they've talked about? Some of the goals or resources? Somebody? Anybody? Come on, jump in. Well, at this point, usually students and postdocs are eager to share some of the things they've talked about, and the skills, range wildly from in all kinds of areas that they're concerned with, and it ends up being a really good opportunity to just hear what someone else thinks about that, and they bounce ideas off of each other about resources, and that seems to be a really valued part of this exercise. Well, I want to also add right here that after doing some of those IDP workshops, it became clear that graduate students in particular wanted more time to sort of talk with each other, and appreciated and asked for the graduate school asked if we could facilitate sort of meetings to talk about that more. And so we did that, and at the first time we did it, there were a lot of students, I don't know, maybe 15 or so or more, who came. We had pizza, and they came and talked with each other, and each subsequent time we did it, they were all eager to do it again. It got a little bit smaller, because that's what happens, is during the semester. But we're going to keep trying to promote that and help to facilitate it, because the few who come now are really devoted to it and would love for us to keep offering it. And we think also with this new, the new recommendation and requirement that the university policy has stated, that now, because there will probably be a lot more students and postdocs interested in attending workshops like this and talking about IDPs, that maybe there will be an increased need for that too. So we'll kind of keep trying to take a pulse on that. So.
And those small group discussions or follow-up groups, that could be something that an individual program could host as well, that you might find is really helpful to your students. And certainly students can just get together as peers and talk about their IDPs too. But having that conversation and somebody to talk through the IDP with can be very helpful to grads and postdocs.
So can I just add one other thing I just thought of, is that I noticed too with the group that people sort of found people within the group who they asked them to help be sort of an accountability partner for themselves. Something that happens sometimes with dissertation writing. You find someone and you want to build in that piece about being accountable to yourself. And so there were a few people who were emailing each other and asking each other, did you do what you thought you were going to do about this? And they found that really helpful.
Okay, good. Okay, so the next step is step 3, having to do with discussing the plan with your mentor or mentors, okay? And like I've said, the IDP may be a time for you to have multiple people that you consider your mentors. Your primary mentor is a great person to advise you on many things, but they may not know everything about all of the skills that you're interested in building or all of the careers that you're interested in. So here's a time where you may have multiple mentors. And students at this point do feel that it's kind of risky, like I said, to share their plan with their mentor. So understand that that's part of the process for them too. So you could talk with them about the advantages of doing so, that their mentor does care about their professional development and can provide some really good advice as well. You could let them know that they don't need to share the entire plan. They may just, summarize some of their plans, some of their goals that they want to go into a conversation with the mentor, or because it's a fillable PDF, they could save a certain version that they're going to distribute to their mentors. Some different ways of going about that. Yeah, and some of the content that we're developing has to do with tips for approaching your mentor. So I think, we'll get to that in 2 slides, but that's something that Imogen has actually been helping with quite a bit, so thank you, Imogen, for that. Next slide, why share your plan? A few points here. So it provides structure, like I said, for the conversation with the mentor. It allows your mentor to give input. It helps you set some reasonable priorities and stay on track. There's some accountability there too. If you tell your mentor you're going to do something, you're more likely to actually do it. And it allows you to better clarify your career goals and expectations, just the process of talking it through with your mentor. And I also wanted to add that we understand that IDPs may be a new thing to faculty mentors as well. So we do have resources for them. So we'll have information about IDPs on our website. They can, of course, view all of the information that's available to grad students and postdocs. And we'll be hosting info sessions, too, in the fall for PIs, grants administrators, and faculty mentors. So we understand. And we also, one of the requests that we had from a student was, if my faculty mentor doesn't know anything about IDPs, I want just one sheet of paper that I can hand that person and summarize what this thing is that I'm doing. So we're working on that as well. So that'll be available to students. Okay, so here, this gets to some of the tips for sharing your plan with your mentor. So some things, kind of use common sense here, but give your mentor some warning. Let them know that this is something that you're interested in talking with them about. Educate them about the process if you need to. Choose a good time to approach them. Set up an IDP meeting in advance. Don't just make this discussion as kind of a little add-on at the end of a regular meeting, but set some time aside just for this. Send them the draft of your IDP or any parts that you're comfortable sharing in advance. And then choose particular goals to share. Okay. The next slide. Potential difficulties. We also talk through this with grad students and postdocs as well. What to do if your mentor is reluctant to discuss your IDP. Don't take it personally. Remind them that it's a recommendation or maybe a requirement depending on your situation. And just tell them that the IDP is important to you. And that it will help you professionally and academically as well. If your supervisor is unsupportive of careers outside the academy, this is where as grad coordinators you could be really helpful to and supportive to grad students or postdocs. You can either find a different mentor, or if you choose to approach your primary mentor, think about how you want to articulate that decision and prepare for that conversation in advance. Remember that you're not the first person to leave the academy, and find some examples of others who have done so to kind of prepare for that conversation. Okay. And then the next step is to implement the plan, execute the plan. So even though I think we only have 1 or 2 slides about this, it's probably the more challenging part of the IDP is actually doing it. So like Amy said, that's why we have these follow-up groups, or we suggest that grad students have a partner or set up their own follow-up groups. Grad coordinators, of course, can be important in this stage as well. Some tips have to do with maybe recognizing and honoring your best work times. So if you're going to set some time aside to work on your IDP, know when you're most productive. So for me, that would be early in the morning. Maybe block those times off in your calendar and actually stay true to that. If you miss a week, that's okay. Just pick it up again the next week. Build in rewards maybe. So if you have accomplished something, or if you've worked really hard on a certain goal, reward yourself with something, going for a run, going out for dessert, something like that. If you think in advance about what types of distractions you're going to have from your IDP, from your goals, think about ways that you would address those in advance. So if there's something that you know that's going to distract you, like a loud, busy work environment, think about how you would combat that when you're confronted with it. Put your IDP in a place that you'll remember it. So maybe you stick it up on the bulletin board next to your computer, someplace that you're not going to forget about it. Set calendar reminders, like I said. If you're using My IDP, the online tool, it'll actually send you reminders, which is nice. And then, of course, the IDP peer learning groups may be helpful as well. Okay. And then the final step is to revise and review. Like I said, we're recommending at least once a year grad students and postdocs take a look at their IDP, although that is not really very frequent. So they should be revisiting it themselves on a more frequent basis. And remember that it's a living document and it'll change over time. So once you've achieved those goals, don't think that you're done. You keep adding to it, changing goals as time goes on. And then, of course, celebrate things that you achieve along the way. Okay, and I think this is our last slide. So this is our current IDP website. If you go there now, you have access to a version of this presentation, but within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have a new look to this part of the website. So we'll have information for graduate students and postdocs, because really the onus is on graduate students and postdocs to write the IDP, as I'm sure you're getting from this. So we have a lot of resources for them. We'll also have tips for them, like I said, for having those conversations with their mentor. Tips for the mentors too, because this may be a new process to them. We'll have information for the PIs and grants administrators who are affected by the NIH requirement. We'll also have access to a reporting system. So for those who have the NIH requirement, to help the PIs and grants administrators actually keep track of who's doing this, there'll be a system that people can use to verify that they're doing this, rather than tracking it all over the place. And peer support meetings as well. We'll have information about those. IDP workshops coming up. We'll have 3 workshops this fall semester for grad students and postdocs, at least 3. We'll have info sessions for PIs, grants administrators, and faculty mentors as well. Okay, and like I said, we're kind of learning as we go with IDPs, so if you have any recommendations about how we could do this better for grad students or postdocs, please, we would really appreciate that feedback. So if it's anything about the template or any information that would be helpful for us to get out there, please let us know. Okay, questions? Yeah.
What is your thoughts about using this with programs that just offer master's degrees or with master's students?
Yep. Yeah, so the question is, what about programs that just offer master's degrees? Is the IDP something that we should be encouraging? And our answer would be yes. We think that IDPs can be helpful for any graduate student at any point. We've wondered if maybe there should be kind of a different approach or a different template for early career or master's students versus a doctoral student. So we're going to, see as we go and get feedback about that. But yeah, we do believe that they're good for any different type of graduate student. Yeah.
Will the NIH requirement mean that the students will have to send their IDP to NIH?
No.
Is the onus on school?
Yeah. So the question is, for the NIH requirement, do grad students and postdocs actually have to give their IDP to NIH? And the answer is no. We've heard pretty convincingly from NIH that that's not what they're interested in. They want to know that institutions have policies in place. So that's what they're interested in, and that people are following those policies. And we're maintaining pretty firmly that the IDP is private to the individual. So we wouldn't be encouraging them to do that. So, yeah, Morris.
Look at the My IDP science career site.
Yeah.
And so I believe in IDP survey. Would you say that it's just as useful for people in the humanities or social sciences to use this tool, or
Yeah. Yeah, so the question is myidp.sciencecareers.org. Is that helpful at all for folks in humanities and social sciences? I would say probably not so much, because the assessment is very specific to the types of careers or the types of skills that students in STEM are developing. However, that said, it's still a nice example if you're thinking about customizing something for your program. I think that's a good example to walk through because it provides a lot of resources, additional reading, which you might be able to apply to students in your program.
But you don't know if any. So what's attractive about this is that it's online.
Yeah.
So if we were to customize,
It would have to be a PDF. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just add that the people who developed my IDP have been approached to create something for humanities, social studies, and I think that they're beginning to work on that, so it might be a while. And I do know that some people find it helpful, I mean, not to use as the whole package, as you said, that would be most useful, but some of the things like the values and interests, which we don't have, we have some tools like that online, you can find tools, but even for a student or postdoc to just look through those, I think is helpful. People have said that they find that helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Regarding the tracking tools, can you specifically like tie to the template, or if somebody is program chooses to customize theirs, or use
Yeah.
my IDP?
Yep. Yep. So the question is for this tracking tool that we're developing, is it tied to any particular template like the one that we've shown you today? And the answer is that it's not. And that's for two reasons, because we wanted to give people as much flexibility in choosing what type of template or process works for them. And also because we didn't want the tracking tool to give students or postdocs the impression that it actually captures information from their plan. So those two are completely separate. So you can choose any IDP form or template or process that works for you and then keep track of it in the reporting system. Yeah. I'm sorry, could you say that again?
The reporting system, so if the IDP is personal and it's only between mentor and they don't even have to share everything with mentor, how is the university or department going to make sure that everybody does have an IDP? What type of reporting system
Yeah.
or tracking is there?
Yeah, so the question has to do with if the IDP is private to the person, how is the university really tracking that somebody's doing it, right? So there's a little bit of an honor system there, but there's also, so the way that, and this is still being developed, the way that we're envisioning it will work is that a grad student or postdoc goes in and logs a particular activity with a particular mentor. That mentor gets a notification that they've been identified within the tracking system. And then the student or postdoc records the activity. So it could be that they've had a discussion with their mentor, and that gets recorded in the system. And so what we're thinking at this point we'll probably do is have an automated email that goes out to the mentor at that point to confirm that that conversation took place. So there is some accountability there. But we also don't want it to be a burden, an additional burden on the faculty mentor as well. So we're still thinking through those things, but yeah, it's a combination of kind of an honor system that the grads and postdocs are logging these activities, they identify a particular person, and then there may be a confirmation step there as well. So, yeah, they don't submit the plan. They're logging activities that they had around the plan. Yeah. Other questions? Anybody? Okay, so we're going to finish a little bit early, I think. If you have any individual questions or concerns, feel free to come talk to us afterwards or send us an email. In this group in particular, as soon as the new materials are available, I'll let you all know, okay? Thank you.
Yeah.